You're listening to Recovery Survey, the podcast that shatters stigmas around different types of addictions and takes a deep dive into spiritual principles.
Even when I was just drinking, even when it wasn't rock bottom, cracked out, homeless, drug addict, when I was just a drunk, my life was chaotic and unmanageable.
My guest today is named Nadia Bruce-Rawlings. She's the mother of 6. She has 22 years sober, about to celebrate 23 years, and she is the author of Scars and Driving in the Rain. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So yes, I have a combined family of 6. I grew up living all over the world, Egypt, Norway, Bahamas, London, and of course, good old America. And I worked in the film industry for quite a long time, and now I've kind of retired from that, and I'm living in Nashville and writing.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to jump into your story and hear a little bit more about maybe the recovery journey and how you found sobriety, and then what led to you writing books.
Gosh. So I always drank. I don't remember not drinking. Like, we just drank. That's what our family did. And then eventually, it was the 80s and there was a lot of cocaine. But what happened at some point, I had stopped doing cocaine for a while because it was getting bad and I was about to lose my job. And then 4 years later, my mom got really sick with cancer. And I met this guy and he did coke and, one thing led to another. And next thing I knew, we were smoking crack. And that was bad. And my mom died. I got very depressed. That really brought me to my knees. And I spent 4 years just smoking crack 24/7, lost my job, obviously, lost everything I owned, went to jail for shoplifting several times, which turns out to be a felony if you do it enough. And, and ended up finally, after jail, they put me in rehab for 6 months. And I had gone to rehab once before, but it didn't work because I wasn't doing it for myself. And this time I really did want to get sober. I knew I was going to die. I knew I was going to die or go to prison. I didn't want to do either. And so I went to this rehab, and I was only going to go for, a little bit of time. I just needed some Prozac and some clothes and I'd be fine. And it took me about a half a minute to figure out I needed more than that. I remember sitting on the front step. It was these 2 old Victorian houses downtown, actually like in Cracktown, around the corner from my dealer's house or apartment. And I'm sitting on the front step while my brother was signing all the papers to put me in rehab. And I was crying and crying. And I realize now, retrospectively, that was my surrender. And I just knew that I had to just surrender. I was so scared to say goodbye to drugs and alcohol because I was so scared to face emotions. And then, so I lived in this place for 6 months, and it was tough. It was very tough. It was very bare bones. It's not like the ones they have today. I mean, some of them, I'm sure, but not the ones around here. And I got a job. My old boss probably needs Al-Anon, but she gave me a job as a file clerk. And previous to my downfall, I'd been like a VP of sales and marketing and stuff in the film industry. And so I started back again as a file clerk. Eventually, it's a long story, but I got pregnant 2 weeks after I graduated from rehab. And the father walked away the minute I did the pregnancy test. So I was a single mom. I was working full time as a file clerk and then an assistant. They gave me a boost up to an assistant position. I was taking the bus. I was living in a sober living, blah, blah, blah. Wasn't easy. And then I had the baby and I took 5 weeks off and I came back and my direct boss had quit and they gave me her job and made me VP of business affairs and gave me a raise. And it was awesome. And it was a lot of work and I had a new baby and looking back at it now, I don't know how I did it. Definitely higher power looking out for me. So that just went on and I went to meetings. I do 12-step program. At the time, I went to a lot more meetings than I do now. But now I have like 6 or 7 sponsees and I work the steps with them every day. They call me every day. They do all the deeds they're supposed to do. And it's very cool to be able to help people. Life went on, people died. I got a house. I lost a house. I got married. I got 5 more kids by marriage. So now I have 6. That was really, really hard. Life went on. And then we decided that we were going to move and leave LA. We were living in LA then. And it was just too much money, too much materialism, blah, blah, blah. So we moved to Nashville. And I stayed a little connected to the film industry at the time for a while, but I started writing. And my daughter, when she was like 5, she was like, "Mommy, what did you always want to be when you were growing up?" And I said, I wanted to be a writer. And she goes, "Mommy, it's not too late," out of the mouth of babes. So I started writing and I ended up connecting with a publisher just by happenstance and got my first book published of short stories and poetry. And it's actually mostly memoir. There's 2 stories that are fiction, but the rest are memoir. And it's very, very intense. And, I was kind of like, God, my neighbors are going to read this and know what I did. and they did. And they asked me about it. But, it was okay because I helped people. People read it and came to me. I got letters. I got emails and stuff like that from people in recovery or people trying to get in recovery and people who had been abused in abusive relationships, etc., that said they were going to seek help because of me or because of my book. And that was just amazing. Just amazing.
And which book was that?
That was Scars, which was my first book. And then I just published Driving in the Rain, which was my second book. It's all memoir and there's both short stories and poetry.
You mentioned that some of the people that have used that as kind of the stepping stone to either seek recovery or get out of those abusive relationships. Is that something that you also experienced in your life? Were you in a relationship that was abusive in nature?
Definitely. My dad, from the get-go, he was an alcoholic who never thought he was an alcoholic. And he abused my mom and he, verbally abused us kids, definitely. He broke my mom's nose. He broke her collarbone. And yet on the outside, we grew up, in this, he was an oil man. That's why we lived everywhere. So we grew up looking great from the outside, except my mom had a cast on her nose or whatever, her arm in a sling. But but that was an car accident or whatever. And then when I grew up, I sought out those same kind of relationships because I didn't know any better. And the guy I was engaged to when I started smoking crack, I think when he was sober, he was a good person, but drugs and alcohol did not treat him well. And he was really abusive physically and mentally and verbally. It was bad. And then, just things that happen. You put yourself in places when you're doing crack that are not good. I've had guns, held to my head and knives held to my neck. And, you're in places you shouldn't be. Yeah. Scary things.
I can definitely relate to being in some of those places that I shouldn't have been. And I've had some of those same kind of situations with guns and knives and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can definitely relate. So you said that both of the books are a mix of memoir and short stories and poetry.
Yeah, they're Scars has 2 fiction stories in it. One, you can tell it's fiction. I'll give away the ending. She burns her father to death because he's been abusing her. And the other one is similar. And the rest are all memoir, but they're all short stories and poetry, very short stories, like kind of looks at your brain, looks at insanity and pain and stuff like that. It's pretty intense, the whole book. Although at the end it gets much happier because my life turned out happy. So it gets uplifting.
So as far as you mentioned the abusive relationship that you were in with the fiance when you guys were smoking crack, was that part of the reason that you got sober, or is the fact that you're in healthier relationships today, or is that just another benefit of your sobriety?
I think a little of both. We broke up, and while I was still like smoking the crack, and I was shoplifting as a way to pay the bills, or to pay for crack, not bills. And he broke. I was still squatting in this apartment. They hadn't managed to evict me yet. And he broke in one night. He broke the door down and broke like all the windows and beat the crap out of this other guy that was there and me. And it was just awful. And we had to run away from the cops because they were coming, and we had a bunch of crack on us. And of course, we didn't want to get rid of that. So living through that and situations like that, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And I can't, I got beat up in prison, not in prison, in jail. I was like the skinny white kid with red hair, and I it was bad. So, and then, when I got sober, it took me a while to get my picker working straight as far as men. But yeah, I actually ended up, we have a great story. My husband and I, we dated when I was 23 and he was 28. When I had first moved to Los Angeles, and we were both drinking a lot. It's a long story, but basically I would break out in hives before every date. I was like, he was my soulmate, and I'd tell everyone how great he was and all this stuff. And he ended up leaving me because he, quote, didn't want a commitment. And 3 months later, he married someone else. And he came to my apartment on the way to the wedding, drunk as a skunk. They were driving to Kansas for the wedding. And he was like telling me how much he loved me and what a mistake he was making and all this stuff. And he doesn't remember doing this, but he did because I was sober. I remember. and and so he went off and got married. And then 10 years later, I got sober and I reached out to him to, quote, make amends. Although, frankly, I think I was just trying to stir things up a little. And he was like, I'm married and I have kids and you should leave me alone. So I was like, okay. And then 10 years after that, I heard from him and he had gotten sober and gotten divorced and wanted to make amends. And it turned out I was actually dating someone at the time, but we ended up breaking up. And he and I, our first date was an AA meeting and a coffee shop thing afterwards. And it was, we're like this sweet AA love story, I guess. It's funny. And it worked out. And had we stayed together when we were loaded, it would have been just abysmal. We'd both be dead.
So you've kind of told us a little bit about what your life's like today, and you kind of hinted at it earlier, but what are some of the benefits that you've seen since you got sober? What does your life look like? What would that hope shot be for anybody that is still using or thinking about getting clean or sober? What would you offer them?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I know that 22 years seems unimaginable to someone who's using or just getting sober or clean. But I mean, within my first year of being sober, I got a house. I got promoted to vice president of something. I mean, how amazing is that? And then I got a house of my very own. Nobody else owned it except me. And so there were, obviously the materialistic benefits. I remember going to this coffee shop next to work when I first got sober, and the guy in the morning was like, "You're always so peaceful and calm." And, remember I was a single mom and working full time and going to AA meetings. And I was like, God, I think it's just lack of sleep, but okay. But honestly, I was and remain peaceful and calm because all that chaos that we thrive on when we're loaded is gone. I mean, the emotional chaos and the oh God, all the chaos that came into our lives, I mean, I just remember everything was a wreck, everything. Even when I was just drinking, even when it wasn't rock bottom, cracked out, homeless, drug addict, when I was just a drunk, my life was chaotic and unmanageable. And now, our bills are paid. We go on walks with the dog. Our kids look up to us. They come to us for advice. I mean, good God. We have fun and we have this great group of friends and they're not all in the program. And, I don't live and breathe and the program. It's not my entire life. I have friends who are normal. But like my best friends knew me when I was just drinking. Then they knew me when I reached my downfall. And then they knew me when I got sober. And they fortunately stuck with me, although I had to make a lot of amends. And we have so much fun. I mean, we went to Hawaii. We took a girls' trip to Hawaii with my daughter and one of my best friends. I mean, how cool is that? I could never do that. And, we weren't drunk and falling on the beach and getting kicked off planes. It's just awesome. My husband makes fun of me because I wake up happy.
That's awesome. It's a great picture of hope and happiness and some of the benefits that we can get if we find this recovery path and stick with it. And, I just want to congratulate you on 22, now almost 23 years. I mean, that speaks volumes about just the fact that the program works and that it is possible for anyone to stop using, stop drinking and find this new way of life. So I just want to say congratulations on that. That's a really big deal. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you. It is awesome.
So if the audience that's listening, if they're interested in finding out more about your books, what are some of the best ways for them to find that? Do you have website, social media? Is there anywhere in particular that they should look for you?
Yes, all of the above. But so I have a website, which is Nadia Bruce-Rawlings, Rawlings, NadiaBruceRawlings.com. Or you could get them on Amazon as well. And it's called Driving in the Rain or Scars. You can get them on my website, but they're cheaper on Amazon. So, do what you want to do. And I have I guess my Instagram is Nadia Bruce-Rawlings as well.
Awesome. Well, as we're kind of closing out the episode, I'd like to give the floor to the guests and just let them speak about whatever it is that may be on their heart. It doesn't necessarily have to be recovery related or anything on topic about what we've just spoken about, but just whatever that message is, whatever that why is that you have, just the floor is yours to share that.
I think I'm looking at my husband has one of those electronic photo things that flip through your photos on his desk where I'm sitting. And I almost want to cry. It's like my whole family, drifting across the screen. And they come to us for what they want and need and questions. And it's not like we're giving them money or anything like that. We are giving them advice and love. And when I was loaded, I couldn't do that. It's just amazing. The joy and peace that you can find in sobriety. That's about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can relate to what you just shared. I think family has definitely become a lot more important to me now that I've gotten rid of all those chemicals that were fogging my brain. And, now I see the importance of family, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to rebuild those relationships and, make those amends and try to repair the damage that I did when I was drinking and drugging. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
One thing I do every day with my sponsees and with a couple other just people I know. I text them 5 things I'm grateful for, and they text me 5 things they're grateful for. And then I also put it on Facebook, which kind of keeps me accountable. Because if I don't put it on Facebook, people are going to be like, what the heck? You're not grateful. And it's not always easy. 5 things every day is hard. But so far I've been able to do it. There was one day when I could only come up with 2 things, and it was just a shit day. But apparently if you do that, it kind of rewires your brain to be happy.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure. I know that my sponsor always encourages me to continue to work on a gratitude list. And if I'm in that, if I'm in that negative place, he encourages me to just like do one on the spot, just even if I don't have like a piece of paper, just do one mentally, like come up with 5 or 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I think that exercise has been really helpful, and it helps me see, just how good my life is today. And it allows me to not take advantage of the opportunities that I'm given, and not take for granted, just how beautiful this life is, and what a wonderful journey that this has been.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Nadia, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing with us about your journey and about your books and all the wonderful things that you're doing and what you're doing to help encourage people that may be struggling with substance abuse or a physically abusive relationship. So I thank you for coming on and taking your time and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Nadia, thank you again so much for coming on the show today and sharing your journey with us. Guys, be sure to check out both of her books, Scars and Driving in the Rain. The links for her books as well as her website will be in the show notes. You've been listening to Recovery Survey. If you got anything out of today's episode, I'd ask you to please leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with a friend. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can find us at recoverysurvey.com. You can listen to all of our episodes on the website as well as connect with us on social media where you can get previews for upcoming episodes.